John 12, verse 1. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus arrived at Bethany, where Lazarus lived, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Here a dinner was given in Jesus' honor. Martha served, while Lazarus was among those reclining at the table with him. Then Mary took about a pint of pure nard, an expensive perfume. She poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, who was later to betray him, objected. Why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor? It was worth a year's wages. He did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. As keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. Leave her alone, Jesus replied. It was intended that she should save this perfume for the day of my burial. You will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me. Meanwhile, a large crowd of Jews found out that Jesus was there and came, not only because of him, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So the chief priests made plans to kill Lazarus as well, for on account of him many of the Jews were going over to Jesus and putting their faith in him. In this passage, we can clearly see worship. And when I think of worship, I think sometimes we may look at worship as things we do, whether it be through singing, through arts, or whatever it may be. That's individually of how we perceive worship. But what we see here is worship as an attitude. And Mary is going completely countercultural here. And it's noticed. It's noticed not only by those around her, but it's also noticed by Jesus. And I just want to look at a couple of things that Mary did that would have surely garnered attention from others, but not necessarily good attention. For one, the first thing Mary did was she went right to where the men were and right to the feet of Jesus. Now, Martha was there serving, and that's probably what would have been expected of Mary in this time, was to join Martha in service. But instead, she again went right to Jesus and joined the men, not even caring what anyone else thought. Then she untied her hair, which for that time was also not allowed, and because the women's hair was looked at as like their crown. They kept it up, that was their beauty. And that's the way they kept it. And so for her to pull it down and then begin to wash the feet, the dirty feet, would have been also frowned upon. And then she took an expensive perfume, and that's what she used to clean the feet. Now, why would that be looked down upon? Because that's a year's worth of wages. Now, Judas's heart, we already know, is in the wrong place. But I would imagine that others around were wondering the same thing. As this house was filled with this fragrance, they were wondering, why is this being wasted for this, to wash his feet? It was because of her attitude. She had Jesus right in front of her. And she abandoned everything. She abandoned the way people perceived her. She abandoned what could have been financial gain for her. She abandoned it all so she can give herself to Christ. And I think that's hard for us even today. These things may not apply to us today. Obviously, a woman's hair can be let down. But how would we even react if a woman began to wash someone's feet with her hair? Let alone anything else. There's so many times that I think if we each check our own hearts, is that our worship is hindered because we're so concerned what's around us. We're so concerned with what the temperature of the culture is at the time, or even just the people around us, whether it be friends, family, co-workers, or even just strangers, is we don't want to be perceived in a certain way. And I think here the lesson that Mary's giving us all is, who cares about what's around us? Because at this time, we get to worship the living God, and we get to do it freely. And I think sometimes we sell ourselves short, is we miss out on what she was probably experiencing was just amazing. She believed. And that's also what led her to do this, was she truly believed in her heart of who he was. She didn't save this perfume for his burial. She used it while he was still living. She didn't wait until he was dead. She said, why wait? Use it now. Worship him now. And to that, I think is something we can all do, is instead of putting off certain things, is let's take the time we have now and worship him. And I think this week is the perfect week for that. It's because as we're leading up to the end of his ministry, as we're leading up to the death and then to the good news of his resurrection, we can really get ourselves back into a place of true worship. All those ways of worship are great, as long as our heart is in the right place. And so for my hope for myself and for everyone around us, for all of you, is to get our hearts, get our attitudes in the right place of worship, so that when we do go back to our normal life, when we are around our family, and when we're around just about anybody, we give him the worship he deserves. That we don't worry about where others think we should be, or what we should be doing, or what we should or should not be giving, but we're giving what is on our heart, and we're acting in a way that is giving all of ourselves, all of our worship to the one who deserves it. And I think this week, as we see what he did for us, as we see that he died for us, that he was resurrected for us, I think then we can look at ourselves and say, he is worth it all. He's worth everything. I shouldn't be holding back any worship from him. I should be giving him everything I have. And it all starts in our heart. It all starts in our heart. And Jesus told the one who was arguing, the one who was actually vocal there, Judas, to leave her alone. And he knew what she was doing. He knew her heart. He also knew Judas's heart, but he knew her heart. And so I just hope that for us, as we read this, that we look and just say, don't worry about what anyone else says. Don't worry about what anyone else does. Just set our eyes on him and worship him with all of our heart and with all of our soul. So I just encourage everyone to take this as something for us to be refreshed in our worship, and just to give it all to him.